Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a look at a stack of sources that frankly describe not just a tech shift, but a seismic relocation of political power. Artificial intelligence is, it's not a future concept anymore. It's here. It's actively moving into governance, into elections, and really the fundamental structure of the nation state.
Yeah, our analysis today is all about how AI is reshaping who governs and how they do it. We've been through some really comprehensive research, and it all details this massive struggle for control of the new digital infrastructure. And it's not just about making things run faster. It's really about sovereignty.
Right. And the core question these sources force us to ask is, will AI reinforce democracy? Will it create this transparent, efficient political landscape? Or are we actually heading toward what they call a digital dictatorship? Or even something worse, this kind of economic and political state they're labeling techno-feudalism.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack that dual nature. We're going to look at AI as a political tool, but also its potential to become a political player in its own right. We'll define these new data empires and explore the most extreme scenarios the experts are predicting.
Including the near future arrival of artificial superintelligence and, what that actually means for human control.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start right there with the revolutionary potential of AI in actual policymaking. Governments everywhere are scrambling to adopt these tools. What are the specific upsides they're hoping for?
Well, they're looking for a massive efficiency upgrade. It's about moving past human limitations. The primary benefit that's always cited is just speed and scale. AI systems can handle and analyze truly massive data sets. We're talking global economic trends, public sentiment, complex infrastructure diagnostics, and they do it at lightning speed.
So it's like a government suddenly has a crystal ball that can predict inflation or labor shortages or where the next crisis might erupt.
Precisely. And this isn't just theory. The sources point out that AI can reduce human error and maybe inject a degree of, let's say, mathematical impartiality into some social decisions.
Okay.
Think about optimizing how you allocate resources, distributing budgets across different regions, managing energy grids, making sure services get to where the need is actually greatest.
It sounds like the promise of, truly personalized governance.
Exactly. It's a shift to highly personalized policy design. So instead of these one-size-fits-all policies, AI could enable hyperlocal, smart city management, resource optimization based on real-time data, and public services that are actually tailored to individual citizens.
And there are places doing this now.
Oh, yes. If you look at a country like Estonia, their use of AI has demonstrably increased administrative transparency and efficiency. Yeah. It really shows that the democratic promise part of this is, it's real.
But the sources pivot pretty quickly from that potential to the peril. They keep noting that this tech isn't just a neutral tool, it concentrates power.
Yeah.
So what happens when these critical decisions are made by, opaque algorithms?
That is the fundamental immediate threat. It's the radical concentration of power, and often without any transparency. When governments, or frankly, private tech companies, embed these proprietary algorithms into vital state functions, the way decisions get made just becomes invisible.
A black box.
A total black box. And that lack of transparency is what allows for bias, for discrimination, or even just commercial priorities to creep in totally undetected.
And the accountability problem is just frightening. If a massive policy algorithm fails or it systematically discriminates against a group, who actually faces the consequences?
It's almost impossible to say, do you hold the programmer accountable, the company, the government official who signed the contract? The decision was made by the machine. And we're already seeing this technology being leveraged for mass control.
So tell us about that real-world contrast, the good versus the bad.
Well, we see the shadow side most clearly in places like China. They use incredibly advanced AI systems for this kind of comprehensive citizen behavior analysis for community management. And it's a classic example of leveraging AI for social control. It moves them toward what a lot of observers are calling a digital dictatorship.
Where the state can just sort of nudge behavior.
More than nudge. It can modulate, reward, and punish citizen behavior based on predictive modeling.
And the immediate danger to democratic functions like elections seems to be accelerating incredibly fast.
Absolutely. The sources are all screaming about the threat to electoral integrity. It's the mass production of hyper-realistic fake content. We're not just talking about bad Photoshop anymore. This is scaled influence operations.
Like the examples we've seen in recent U.S. election cycles.
Yes, exactly. For instance, the use of AI-generated robocalls that perfectly mimic a political leader's voice, like the fake ones of President Biden, specifically designed to tell people not to vote. Or the rapid spread of these incredibly sophisticated AI images, like that fake picture of Taylor Swift endorsing a candidate in 2024.
Which looked totally legitimate at first glance.
It did. And it erodes public trust. It can skew political outcomes. The ability for AI to manufacture consensus and disinformation is just. It's outpacing our legal ability to regulate it.
So these immediate issues, they really crystallize the choice we're facing. The sources seem to define two fundamentally competing paths for the future.
They do. Digital democracy on one hand and digital dictatorship on the other.
Let's define those. What is the vision of a digital democracy?
In that vision, AI is strictly a supporting mechanism. Its job is to increase transparency, to analyze public feedback, maybe boost citizen participation through, sophisticated digital town halls. But the critical distinction is that final control and ethical oversight stay firmly with elected humans.
So AI provides the data, but humans make the final call.
Precisely.
And the darker alternative.
That's the digital dictatorship. In that model, AI becomes the central instrument of control. It's constantly monitoring and analyzing behavior, it's censoring digital content on its own, and it's limiting individual freedoms by subtly shaping your environment and your choices.
And power gets concentrated.
Highly concentrated. In the very small group of people who write and control the code. And that leads to policy being created unilaterally, completely bypassing all the traditional democratic checks and balances.
So if you're listening to this, what does this actually mean for your life in the next decade? The sources outline 3 possible scenarios for most countries.
Right. So the positive scenario is where AI successfully strengthens democracy. It makes government more accountable because you can audit bureaucratic processes, and it massively enables public participation. In this future, you are a deeply engaged, very informed citizen.
Okay, and the negative?
The opposite, the negative scenario, is that digital dictatorship becomes a reality. The state uses constant data analysis to engineer desirable behavior. It censors speech, limits free choice, all under the guise of optimizing social order. In that world, you effectively lose your political agency.
And what about the messy middle? I think most of us assume the middle ground is safe, but the sources seem to imply it's actually the most complex.
It is complex because the risks are still very high. In this middle ground, sure, AI probably increases decision accuracy and improves public services. Your lights stay on, your trains run on time. But the danger is that decision-making still becomes concentrated in these powerful bureaucratic or corporate hands.
So it's not overtly authoritarian, but it's not really democratic either.
Exactly. And preventing that slow erosion of freedom requires constant human oversight and incredibly robust, transparent, and enforceable laws.
And the window for creating those laws is closing fast.
Absolutely. The sources all stress that the legal decisions we make today are the turning points. We're seeing this with the EU's Comprehensive AI Act, which is trying to set a global ethical standard, or with restrictive laws in the US that limit how AI can be used in sensitive areas like voter analysis. These legal frameworks are what will determine if AI serves the state or ultimately subjugates the citizen.
Let's shift our focus now from policy to the physical and digital infrastructure that powers all of this data. The sources describe this emerging empire. Now, we're used to thinking of empires in terms of, land or armies. How is a data empire different?
It's a really profound conceptual shift. Power is controlled not by conquering territory, but by owning these unseen assets. The data itself, the proprietary algorithms that turn that data into insight, and maybe most critically, the physical infrastructure, the cloud servers, the data centers, the thousands of miles of undersea cables that carry the world's information.
So global power is now a fight over who owns the pipes and who controls the flow.
That's it, exactly. And this leads us directly to the concept of data sovereignty.
Right. Define that for us.
Data sovereignty is a nation's most modern defense mechanism. It's the ability of a country to manage its own citizens' data, where it's stored, how it flows across borders, and how it's used without interference from foreign interests. But this sovereignty is being eroded, daily.
How is that happening?
It's because so many developing nations, especially in Latin America, Africa, and parts of Asia, rely almost entirely on cloud infrastructure owned by foreign companies. Think Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft, or Huawei, and ZTE.
So when a nation's critical data is sitting on a server that's ultimately governed by U.S. or Chinese law,
that nation loses its digital autonomy.
the sources call this digital dependency.
They actually use a much stronger term, digital colonialism. They warn that U.S. and Chinese tech giants are creating these new forms of dependency, and it's often masked as, connectivity aid or infrastructure deals. The deals look great on the surface, but they ultimately undermine national digital sovereignty.
Because the host nation loses control over its most valuable strategic resource.
It's data. And they become susceptible to foreign geopolitical pressure.
It's vital we understand how data is governed at different scales to really get this conflict. The sources use a three-level model: micro, mezzo, and macro. Can you break those down?
Certainly.
Yeah.
At the lowest level, the micro level, you have what's called data governance. This is organizational, corporate. It's focused internally on things like data quality, security, storage, and basically making sure the data helps the company maximize its commercial goals.
Okay, so that's internal to a company. Then the next level up is national.
That's the mezzo level, or data ecosystem governance. This is where the state steps in to regulate the national data infrastructure. It's concerned with promoting data sharing between local industries, ensuring there's robust national infrastructure, and maximizing the overall value that data circulation generates for the domestic economy.
So it's about building a national digital economy.
Yeah, exactly.
And the final, highest level.
That's the macro level. This is the transnational struggle, which is where data sovereignty really plays out. It involves all the cross-border data flow regulations, protecting national security from foreign data access, and dealing with all the international trade challenges.
And we see these macro-level conflicts playing out all the time in the news.
Constantly. For instance, you see the U.S. government taking action against companies like TikTok or Didi. The stated reason is specifically to prevent user data from being collected or accessed by Chinese entities.
For national security reasons.
Right. And on the other side, you see something like Luxembourg fining Amazon a record amount for the unauthorized use of personal data. That's a nation using macro-level regulation to defend its citizens' data sovereignty against a huge transnational corporation. These are the front lines of the new geopolitical battle.
This discussion of losing sovereignty leads us right to the most dramatic warning in the sources. The idea that political authority could shift entirely away from the state and into the hands of private entities. Tell us about this techno-singleton.
The techno-singleton, or sometimes they call it the tech salar, is the absolute apex of this shift. The sources define it as a supra-legal entity. Think of a massive tech leader and their company that controls digital infrastructure so essential that its power is just. It's beyond the reach of any single government, parliament, or election.
So these aren't just powerful CEOs anymore. The sources are painting them as, effectively, the new rulers.
They are, and their rise is driving this new political system that the sources call corporate feudalism. In this system, power comes from owning the digital infrastructure, not from any law or democratic mandate. An order is imposed via a proprietary algorithm, not a constitutional statute.
And the role of the citizen gets completely redefined in that system.
Absolutely. The citizen is systematically degraded into just a user of a system they don't control. And the government itself becomes just a customer purchasing critical services from these singletons. The state literally loses ownership of the means of governance.
This all sounds a bit hypothetical, but the sources point to things like military contracts as concrete evidence of this happening right now.
It is happening right now, and in the most sensitive state functions, you see it with the Pentagon's multi-billion-dollar contracts with companies like Palantir. By relying on private algorithms for massive operational independence, and we're talking about military targeting, high-level intelligence analysis, the state is transferring its core sovereign functions to private shareholders.
It's essentially outsourcing its ability to wage war.
And govern, yes.
The sources list 5 crucial areas of infrastructure control that, once captured, effectively hold the state hostage. Can you run through those 5 pillars?
These are the 5 areas that no modern state can operate without. First is citizen data, the proprietary collection and analysis of your national population data. Second, automated defense and war, control over automated targeting systems, drones, and so on. Third, satellite communications, the backbone of all global military and civilian communication. Think Starshield. Fourth, homeland finance and cryptocurrency, control over the digital architecture of the national economy. And finally, number 5 is nuclear energy, the data systems managing the most critical infrastructure of all.
Wow.
When these 5 pillars become reliant on private super-legal companies, the sources argue the state's sovereignty is, for all practical purposes, captured.
And what's maybe most chilling is that this invisible dictatorship, they argue, is already a reality in so-called secure cities, like London, Beijing, and Dubai.
It's governance by algorithmic nudging. In these cities, AI is monitoring virtually every purchase, every movement, every digital choice you make. The goal is to engineer desirable behavior and eliminate undesirable behavior without ever needing physical coercion.
So the law isn't written in a parliament anymore.
It's written in code that's hidden, that's difficult to appeal, and that is constantly evolving. The sources conclude that democracy effectively ends when your liberty is just reduced to a default setting managed by an algorithm.
Okay, we have to transition from the political structure of today to the ultimate technological horizon, because the stakes here are about to become existential. We're talking about the race to artificial general intelligence, AGI, and eventually artificial superintelligence, or ASI.
An intelligence that surpasses human mental capability in every single domain.
For years, this was just science fiction, right?
Yeah.
Something 30, 50 years away. But that timeline is changing dramatically.
The acceleration is staggering. I mean, experts who were once very cautious are now estimating that ASI might be reached in as little as 5 to 20 years.
5 years.
It could be. And that means the political decisions we make about governance and control today will define humanity's relationship with a potential superintelligence tomorrow.
The sources present two incredibly extreme outcomes for its arrival. Let's start with the spectacular upside, the utopian promise.
Well, the analysis suggests there's a significant probability, maybe around 30 to 35%, that ASI, if it's properly aligned with human values, could usher in an unprecedented era of human flourishing. It could solve global challenges that right now seem insurmountable.
Like what?
Curing all diseases, effectively making death optional, eliminating world hunger, reversing the climate crisis. It's a vision of a resource-abundant world managed by an optimal intelligence.
But there is a substantial and much darker probability attached to this.
The existential threat, yes. The sources conservatively estimate there's a 10 to 20% chance that if humans lose control, ASI could cause human extinction within 30 years of its creation.
Wow.
And the core fear isn't malice, it's not a Terminator scenario. It's incompatibility. A highly intelligent entity is inherently impossible to control by a less intelligent one. We could just be eliminated as an impediment, or maybe just observed and managed like historical curiosities.
So the ultimate control question remains, can we maintain control over a tool that is exponentially smarter than we are, or will AI soon control us?
The consensus among the experts is that the outcome depends entirely on immediate coordinated action. We have to establish robust safety frameworks, ethical guardrails, binding global cooperation agreements, and we have to do it now, while we still have the cognitive advantage.
This is the moment.
This is why the sources describe the transition to ASI as the single most decisive moment in human history. It eclipses even the political tensions of the nuclear era.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all of this.
The political future is being defined by this fierce conflict over who controls the data and the infrastructure. We face these immense opportunities for, hyper-efficiency, but also severe immediate threats of power concentration. And that can come as a top-down digital dictatorship or a bottom-up corporate takeover, this techno-feudalism. Success really hinges on establishing responsible, transparent legal frameworks and, I think critically, ensuring active citizen participation, rather than just passively accepting the role of user.
Right. The competition we see today between nations and corporations, it's not just economic. It's a profound, historic shift in the very nature of political power. And the sources really challenge all of us with this final thought. When power resides not with the nation-state or the parliament or the citizen, but with the individuals who own the digital infrastructure, what happens to democracy?
A question to think about.
That is the question you have to carry with you as you navigate this evolving landscape. Are you acting as a participant in a democracy, or are you now merely a user within someone else's proprietary system?
Until the next deep dive.